Welcome to Focus on Why. I'm Amy Rowlandson, your host. Join me to explore the compelling stories, profound insights, and captivating experiences shared by my guests from all over the world. Focusing on the importance of why, these relatable, uplifting, and inspiring conversations will empower, motivate, and guide you to create your own purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Do you truly understand the power of a focus on why in business? Are your employees fully engaged? Do they consider their work meaningful? Or does your organization have purpose gaps? Focusing on key areas of employee engagement, contribution, fulfillment, well-being, and purpose, all of which have proven links to increased productivity and profitability, I deliver inspiring, mesmerizing, and captivating talks and workshops, providing clear, actionable steps to take. To discuss your specific business needs, reach out to me via the link in the show notes, and together we can plug those purpose gaps. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Andrew Miller. Welcome indeed.
Thank you very much for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, so am I. And firstly, I'd just like to say a huge shout out to Ricardo Sai for the introduction. It's always great to have people who have been on the show and say, you know what, you should have a conversation with. And here we are making it happen just for you, Ricardo. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. And yeah, we need to catch up soon. So give us a shout when you hear this.
Brilliant. So tell me, Andrew, what is it you're focusing on right now?
I work in the business space, working with small business owners and entrepreneurs specifically, but my company's called Business Enjoyment. That's a key thing. I think there's a lot of people who focus on making as much money as they can or getting six-figure businesses and that sort of stuff. And it's quite common to meet people who've actually hit the success button, tick, 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 hit all the societal concept of success and not happy. Flip side, you got people that are very unhappy because of their stress and everything. But it's working on people to remove the stress, but also what's that extra thing? What's that stuff that let's get to a good position, but what's that thing that's really going to bring things alive in business terms? So. And that's where we overlap on the purpose thing, because let's get ourselves in a comfortable position, but that extra bit is where we step into purpose and actually connect what we do with something that makes a difference in the world. And the strapline I use, which you were aware of, is that when you find that, and hopefully I think you recognize it as well, and you get fully connected to it. My phrase is, I want you to enjoy your business so much it makes your bits tingle.
Oh my goodness. So yes, tap into the tingle is the commonality that we have. In fact, we have many. So we'll probably encounter more as we go along. But explain to the listener what the tingle means for you, because they probably know what it means to me. And I'll just briefly explain. For me, it's linked to goosebumps, because goosebumps don't lie. And when you get that tingle from goosebumps, it's a real core emotion that something has connected deep. It could be awe, it could be an inspiration or admiration. It could, whatever it is. For me, if that happens when you're talking about, or you hear someone talking about their purpose, then you know that it really does resonate. So tell me what your tingle means for you.
Very similar, in fact, and it's probably best if I contextualize it, because it was my experience and what I mean by bits, because there is a meaning behind it as well as a cheap innuendo. But it came through my search for purpose. So I come from a very head-spaced background, mathematician, accountant, all these sort of things, very logical. Just for context, it'll probably crop up later on. Yes, an accountant, but not a typical accountant. I was actually an insolvency practitioner, which when companies went bust, my job was to take control of those companies and effectively run the business and keep them alive best as possible. But working with people going through some traumatic situations, as you can imagine, in a business context. But once I stepped out then, and I knew I wanted to help people, and what did I want to help people with, and trying to find out what it was all, it was very much a head exercise. And I quite quickly got to we'll use the phrase purpose. It wasn't fully realized at that point, but it looked like it. And that was to change the way that success is measured in business. Because I say it's not all about, shouldn't be about money. It should be about something else. It should be about enjoyment. So I could think about it logically, but there was no connection to it. I could write it down and go, oh, yes, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, I can talk about it and all the rest of it, but there was no, So it had to require a lot of working with various people, unblocking some of those barriers that are in you, going back to the young age. What was the thing that was there, and all the breaking down of me, and starting moving me from someone that was just something that used my head to something that actually used all the bits. Because we think all over the place, we don't just think with our brains. And when I got that moment, and then everything sort of opened up like a dam releasing, it was like a lightning bolt. And yes, floods of tears, all that sort of thing. But it connected everything. So we talk about our head, thinking with our head. We think with our gut. We think with our heart. I just rephrase that slightly. So it's the brain, the tummy, the soul. BTS. Those are your bits. So when they all align, when you know you're going in the right direction, everything opens up and you hit it exactly as you say. It's that lightning bolt that goes through that sets the emotions going, set the tingle going, makes your bits tingle.
Love it. And absolutely, we're not just a head on a stick. We are, although many of us, I say us, I'm not going to include myself in that anymore. Many people do walk around just heads on sticks. And that realization that there was a disconnect for you, what has that gone on for you to do or be?
It's just changed everything. It just it makes me clear about what I'm doing. It makes me feel more comfortable about what I'm doing. It makes me easier to decide what I do next. There's still challenges, there's still problems, but they're just things to deal with. They're not as maybe as stressful as they may have been before, because beforehand I didn't really know the direction I was heading in. So yes, there's still stuff I try which doesn't work. There's still things that I'd like to be better, but it's just saying that's okay. I'm going in the right direction, and it's all good. So it doesn't cause it. Yeah, so the pressure's gone, the stress has gone, not gone, but dramatically reduced. And I mean, I'm a sort of at the stage where there's almost no separation between business and life, and I don't mean that in a workaholic sort of no work-life balance. There's plenty of downtime and whatever, but I'm just melded into. I am my business. I am my pursuit. I am my purpose, and so it's just a sense of wholeness in the world.
Yeah, I hear you. And what I wanted to ask you is you spoke about your company being business enjoyment and that being the name. And I just wondered how you selected enjoyment over fulfillment or engagement or any of the others that could have given similar results.
And it's one of those things that I couldn't actually tell you where the word came from now. I can remember the whole period I was going through of reflecting of who am I, what I do, and it was at a transition point. I'd been working with another coach in a business. We'd working together, and we decided to go our separate ways for all the right reasons. And I was going through that phase of who am I, what am I, what am I about, what is it I actually do for my clients, and that kind of thing. And ultimately it was just by looking at those people that I got on with best, and I was getting the best results with, and getting a conversation, and it was like 2 hours would just zip by, and you just knew what to say and what to do and all that kinds of things. It was just those perfect moments. And why did they come to me, and what did they get out of it? And certainly was that concept of it's not about the money. They didn't come to me because they needed more money. They might have done, but that wasn't why they came. But ultimately, it was because they weren't enjoying what they were doing, and we got them to a point where they were. So it must have come. I can't remember where that wording came from, but it must have come through the dialogue and the conversations I had with those people. Will be there. But it just, once that sort of came up with, it's like, it felt right. And then I would start using it and speak to other people about it, and it would get a reaction from people, and it just it's one of those things that sat there for a while and going, yeah, I think this is it, right? And at that time, I was just still within that sort of umbrella of doing something else, but I would call myself a business enjoyment coach within. And then when I stepped out, it's like, No, I like this. This is the thing to go with, business enjoyment. And then again, brain kicks in. I learned a little nugget from somebody else. This wasn't the intention behind it, but it was just something that I just thought, oh, that's beautiful. And that's the actual meaning of enjoyment. Because we think if we enjoy something, we're getting joy from it. Oh, that's good. Haha, we've had fun. Oh, I've enjoyed it. So that's the more the hedonistic enjoyment. But the actual word enjoy comes from French, enjoy. And there's another word that's very similar, encourage, encourage, which means to give courage to. So enjoy actually means to give joy to somebody else. So wrapped within enjoyment is the concept of purpose, which is you are there to help somebody else and give joy to them.
See, I knew there was a reason. It
And I
wasn't
didn't know
just
that.
plucked out.
Well, I didn't know it at the time. That's the thing. So that was not the
No.
reason it came about, but that's the reason why it's a big reason with a capital R.
Yeah, I love that. And this mission to change the way that success is measured in business, this is no small feat.
No. And for me, the concept of purpose, because I think we got a good discussion what purpose is and that kind of. We've all got probably our different definitions of what it means and how why fits into it, and purpose. I think why is an element of, but part of the thing for purpose for me is that it is something that you're never going to achieve, an impossible mission. And there's two reasons for that. One is, remember, I'm in a sort of a businessy space. So actually what I want to do is create a business with purpose at the center of it that can go on without me. So that gives me the opportunity to think bigger and think wider and not just something I can do in my lifetime. But it's also this element of attachment. And most stress and concern comes from the concept of attachment, basic Buddhist principle. I'm not a Buddhist, but it's true. But if we are looking to make a difference, and we are constantly thinking we're not there yet, haven't done it yet, so far to go, never going to achieve it, then we're putting pressure on ourselves and we're not getting the satisfaction. If we can let go of the attachment, but still have the intention, high intention, low attachment, then everything that we do that moves us forward in the right direction has a positive result. And that's at the heart of enjoyment as well. It's all enjoying the journey, the old phrase. So yes, I can move things in the right direction. I can start ripples. I can do what I can to get other people to take on things on after me. There are other people doing the similar sort of thing. Great, let's collaborate. But I'm not under no illusion that I will make the difference in myself, and that is okay.
Agreed. It's your life's work. It is something that you know that there will be ripple effects that you've created as a result. Some of you will never even know that you created that, but you just have to know that what you're doing out there is having an impact, a positive impact, I should say, as well. Not just a negative impact, but a positive impact. And what I wanted to ask you is, the changing the way success is measured in business is probably an overarching desire, but are there sort of smaller versions or elements also that sit within your work that you want to achieve?
Yeah, well, that big change is a cultural shift at a high level, at a government level, at large company level, and that's why it's not going to be a simple task. So my main direction in the first instance is working with many people as possible to get them to just buy into the concept and talk about it and go, yeah, you're right. Because I think most of us get it. I think most of us realize it's not all about the money. But usually we're in a situation where it's a bit tight and it does become about the money because, we're in need of certain things. But normally we can lift above that a lot higher than we actually think, if that makes sense. The concept for me is to create a community of business owners, we'll get them to a point where we're starting to track some of these things. I've got a rough idea of what our starting point is of an alternative, which is essentially quality, quantity, trust, and good. So the quantity of what we produce, the quality of what we produce, have we got trust between our suppliers, our customers, and people we work with, and are we doing good all the way along the line? And of course, good can be negative. If The water authorities, there's a lot of quantity going on, but poor quality, no trust, and negative goods. It's that sort of thing. So it's not that's the counterpoint to money. So the way I look at it for working with an individual is, first I've got to get them in the right space. So it's called getting the bedrock in place. So let's just make sure, unless you're going through let's go back a sec. Having your why is one thing. And I think the why that you have gets you up every day, gets you going every day, gets you getting through a load of stuff if you know who you are, which is what you talk about. Purpose builds slightly above that, and that is, what do you do with that why to a certain extent. And what I try to get into people is, don't worry about that until you are in the right place to think about that. Because there's so many people going, oh, I haven't got my purpose yet. I don't know what my purpose is. Oh, are you in a good place yet? Are you in a good place to actually help other people? If not, help yourself first, the old cliche. So let's get them in the right place financially, mental strength, resilience, working with the right kind of people, their inner confidence, those sort of things, so that they are in a good place. Not perfect, there's always stuff to work on, but a good solid foundation on which we can then build purpose. And in fact, the work of going through that and working what our blockages and our barriers are will actually give us clues as to how to unlock purpose as well, because there will be a connection between the two things. And purpose is not just something that floats around. We'll resonate with it. It's connected to us. So the more we understand ourselves, the more easy will be to find purpose. But don't start on it until you have to, until you can do. There's no have to, there's no must do, there's no should do. You want to because you're in the right place and it feels the right thing to do.
It's so often the case, Andrew, that people aren't able to have a vision for the future, and the reason they can't do that is because they're already in burnout, and the body is literally shutting down every way it can, of preventing you from taking on more. So it makes perfect sense, to focus on your core needs first, and then from that place you're in a position to then be able to help. So totally on board with that. Your journey moving from working as an insolvency practitioner to where you are now, again, it's not an overnight transition. It's
Yeah.
clear that it's been a growth. And where you just sort of said that it comes from within, you create your purpose from within. It's not something you find externally. Absolutely agree. It is a process. And it's not a process that, if you do this step, then this step, then this step follows, albeit that there are pieces of the jigsaw to gather.
Yes.
And those pieces come together. For you, what has been something that you weren't expecting that has come as one of those pieces of jigsaw?
In terms of finding purpose and getting connected, that mean, or
just your work, just something that you said you were like a head on a stick, and you were literally very head based. What has surprised you about this journey?
ooh, what surprised me? Well, in the first, if you go back to where it was, it's one of those things that I was going to make a reference there that's going to mean absolutely nothing to anyone, unless you're a big Terry Pratchett fan. The Terry Pratchett book, where there's these little tree frogs in a lily pad in the Amazon forest, in truckers and diggers, and they only live their whole life in this lily pad, and so they've got no knowledge or awareness of the things outside. And there's one frog that gets to the edge and looks over the edge and goes mit 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 and finds out a new way. Anyway, but it's one of those things that when you are following the normal patterns and the normal behaviors and being very head based, which our whole society is head based, it's not unusual for us to be in that space, but I was just a far end of that. You see the world a certain way, and it's not even a question that you are even asking yourself as to how else it could be, because you just cannot imagine the what it's like outside of that. And I guess that's the biggest thing overall, is just that kind of stepping through the curtain and going, oh, there is something beyond the lily pad. I had no idea. There's a whole forest out there. There's a whole a whole world out there. And so it's just it's an extra step of welcome to the universe. I can't put it better than that. I think it's sort of like you're in a little bubble, and then there's all this.
And this lens shift of perspective and change of sort of perceptual positions of what else is out there. What has that done for you to know that there was this entire different way of thinking, being, doing for you?
Well, first of all, it's still clear that it's still an extension of me. So I've not changed. It's not like it's just opened up extra resources. So all the bits that were me there before are still there, and they can still do that stuff in exactly the same way. So it's sometimes we're in a fear, if I change, then I'll lose all the stuff I've done before. No, that's still there. It's just giving me access to more things. So, beforehand, I say it would all be very logical based, and I was quite empathetic and naturally, because that's what I want to do. But stepping into some of the therapies that I now use for people around eye movement, a bit of energy, using the kinesiology, sorry, to test people's beliefs and shift things internally, working in a child work, stuff that would not have made any sense to me at all back then, and I would have just dismissed. I can still actually put a logical reason to most of these things. I don't see them as esoteric or spiritual or anything like that. I can still see a logic behind them. And that actually helps me to explain it to a few people as well, who may not be quite so energy driven. But yeah, it's just opened up things differently. So when I'm working with someone, I can point them in a direction to help things, but to be able to actually shift them, to actually be able to change them at a deeper level, brings a whole extra dimension to my game.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's really interesting. I mean, you've referenced earlier about the element of attachment and how that has the stress and concern. And you said it was a Buddhist saying, or there is a Buddhist saying that you were particularly thinking of there. You've mentioned Terry Pratchett. Who have been influences for you in your journey?
Well, I can't get past Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. That had a profound impact on me. I it did it help me? Yeah, essentially, it helped me get through the death of my dad. It was a particular time, and that I was reading it around there, and it just sort of help me put things in perspective, help me get connected to things a little bit more, shift things in a different way, and that. But I just think it's the most amazing book, and even though it's small, it's so densely packed with wisdom and insight. And I went through it once. I pulled out all the things that were like interesting and noteworthy, and that's a good point. And I think what I wrote down was bigger than the actual book itself. It's like how is there more content in there than there's actually in the book? It's one thing that if you've never read it, get a copy, read it. If you have got it and you have read it, read it again and again and again, because every time I read it, there was more stuff that came out of it. I'd heard so many things that people say, "Oh, this comes from the book." I never saw that. I saw something else. It's just so full of stuff. So that's definitely a massive influence. You were nodding, presumably you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's actually Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is the easier of his reads. And
Yeah.
I say that because I thought, well, that's great. I've read that book. I'm sure I can then go on to read more of his work. And I remember walking around the house going, I don't understand what he is saying here, because it was so academic. In fact, I'm just looking at my bookshelf now. Okay. So here we go. So Man's Search for Meaning, amazing. And I can understand why 9 million copies have been sold, because it is, I wouldn't say easy to digest. The content is not easy to digest because it is, harrowing account, but it is something you can understand.
And if I may, what I'd recommend if you've not read it is read through it once, then let it digest and read through again. But it's not as there are other books in that space which really go into graphic detail of the gruesomeness, and it's not that. There's a psychological challenge, but it really does not go into some of the horrible things that were. There's none of the experiments or anything like that covered. It's just being in that situation and the pressure on that sort of thing, which, so it's not absolutely not a smiler moment, but it's not as heavy as some of the other books in that space. But
No, for
sorry.
sure, it's not Edith Eger's The Choice and some of the
Absolutely,
things that
that
she
had a much
references in
more
there.
of a trigger to me
Oh,
than,
oh, that yeah. There's one bit in that book
I think
that
I know the bit you mean.
I cannot get rid of it. We'll talk about that later. It's just too much. So then I went on to think, well, I can read Yes to Life in
Oh,
Spite of Everything, and I could read The Will to Meaning, or I could read Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning. So my advice would be, unless you're an academic and have an incredible knowledge of words and understanding, these are not as easy to read, but they are still worth reading. It just
okay.
takes longer. So if you want to know more about logotherapy and things like that. Anyway, that's an aside, but thank you for sharing a book that I have read so many times and of course is probably at the core of all of my work, and it's been instrumental in the book I've just written on what Focus on Why. So yes, so he helped you to navigate grief and understand life and death. I mean, that's a pretty huge subject.
And it's only 75 pages long, whatever, 125. But yeah, it's well, yeah, there you go. I mean, maybe I should put that on there. That should be on the back cover. I mean,
Yeah, in terms of what you took away and how you apply that advice or guidance or whatever it was that helped you to navigate something that happens to all of us. We don't know when our death day is going to be. We don't know when other people's death day is going to be. And so it is something that is not often talked about or discussed or even worked through with one another.
yeah, and I think the key bit for me in there was, and I can't even I couldn't tell you the wording, and when I went back and found the wording again, it wasn't the way I remembered it. But anyway, essentially it was referencing how gas fills a space, essentially, and the fact that a small amount of gas will automatically fill whatever size of container it's in, which I remember from my days at school. But the point being was that it was talking about stress, and essentially saying it was stress is relative. So it just perfectly explained that situation where you can have somebody who's rich, doing well, life's good, and then they get all worked up because something small's happened. Flip side, you can see people living in the worst conditions, use the cliches, slums of India, Philippines, those sort of things, and you can find joy and happiness and all the rest of it. And the people who are in one place just cannot comprehend how can you be happy in that situation? And at this point, it's all relative. You find a natural level of where you are, and then it's the ups and downs from that natural level that make the difference between happiness and joy. And what part of our job is as we get greater learnings, as we go through grief, as we get perception on things, is to lift our level up and hold on to that so that we can get greater joy and less stress as we move higher and higher. So it was the thing with losing my dad was it created a perspective which I was able to hold on to, so that when something happened later on, which I won't go to the story, but it was something that was, my wife was absolutely stressing in tears and all the rest of it, and I'm like going, seriously, this is fine, we can get through it. So it's taking those lessons and embedding them in yourself rather than forgetting about them, which is what some people do, and drop our level back down again. So that's one of the key things I got from the book.
You said it earlier, it's about the why being what gets you up every day, and the purpose is what you do with that. And I call that reflection with action. So the reflection is where the why comes, and the purpose is how you put that into action. So absolutely, again, we're so aligned. And what you've just shared there is that for me, I'm hearing that you have an understanding that you get to ascribe meaning to every moment. And that's what Frankel's message was, is that you can make everything mean whatever you choose it to be, and
Totally
that is
agree.
it.
Yes, and that was the other big thing. And because there is no meaning of life, but you can find meaning in everything, and that's what I held on to as well in terms of my strive for purpose. And it's that for everyone sort of says that, we were talking about earlier on about reason with R and a capital R. Everything happens for a reason. I don't think everything does happen for a reason, but we can find reason in everything that happens. It's exactly the same thing, and it's all about being grateful for stuff that does happen, whether particularly if it's outside of our control, because some things are. So let's be grateful when good things happen to us, but then taking that and doing things with it, and having responsibility and ownership of things moving forward.
And control and responsibility, a lot of people have those as like, oh, I don't want that. I want to choose other more exciting things like freedom. And Frankl explains that you can't have one without the other. And, it really does make sense. So I wanted to ask you, what does responsibility mean for you in your attitude and your approach to your work?
I think it's about taking things, not taking things for granted. So I'll give an example. We have I run sort of discussion groups on various things around the stuff that I talk about, and one of the things that we often talk about is that concept of if you won the lottery. The whole thing. And I do actually know someone that won £1 million in the lottery, so those always become interesting conversations. But so many people go, no, if I've not worked hard for it, I don't deserve it, and I will give it all away type thing. We see that happen a lot. And when you get good fortune, I think responsibility is saying, be grateful for that, take it on board. But now I've been given this, what can I do with this to help further things? I might benefit from it. I might have some nice holidays and all the rest of it, but that's going to be useful to get me in a good position. But ultimately, because we've got to look after ourselves first, we don't want to burn out and all the rest of it. But I don't want to be extravagant about it. I don't want to waste it. And then if we're in purpose and we're already on that mission, then all these things can be driven into making that difference. And so the thought, I haven't won the lottery. But the thought of, if I did, I don't even do the lottery, so that'd be really impressive. But if I did, I know exactly what I would do with it. And it wouldn't, I'd shore some things up for myself, absolutely, but to get myself in the right position. But it would be about moving me forward. So I'm not scared about having lots of money, because I know where it would go and what it would do and the difference I would make with it. And that's kind of what I mean by responsibility. Flip side is that there's bad things that happen to us outside of our control. And it comes and that's what I mean by responsibility there. One, let's learn from that. I talked about getting that level up and saying, well, let's keep that sense of perspective, but also not blaming ourselves and not giving ourselves a hard time for something that wasn't actually our fault.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it was Stephen Covey that talks about responsibility and the ability to respond, and echoing Frankl's work. So yes, huge thank you to Frankl, to both of us, and inspiring us forward and taking all that you know and knowing that you're not going to achieve all of what you want to in your lifetime. What is the living legacy that you do want to see happen?
Living legacy that I want to see happen is to essentially get things into a position so that they are moving forward. I've got a vision in my head of a community. It's going to be sit in a well, I had a phrase for it, but it's now become the metaverse, I think. But it's going to be in virtual reality space. But people from all over the world can join this community essentially. This is a few years in the future when we've all got 3D headsets and can tap into it. But it always frustrates me when you go on a website and it's just a flat website. I've been playing computer games for decades, which are all 3D. Why can't we do that on a website format? So if you're coming into a place, so I had this vision of sort of Disneyland. And you enter at the front. You've got the notice board where you log in and put your details and whatever level you've got, and then over on your left, and so you've got this big central arena like you might have in Thorpe Park or Spencer Parks or Disneyland or whatever, and all the things branching off it. And over on the left is like the bookshop, and then next to that's a video store, and then there's a theatre. There's all the books you need, all the videos you need, all the people performing. Over on the right is a first aid centre in case you need help. There's a cafe over here where you can meet with people and catch up and discuss. There's roads going off of it, and in this park is everything you need to get yourself in the right position, get get your bedrock in place, start finding purpose, etc., etc., to get you into the business enjoyment mode. And that can be created quite quickly, quite easy with the right people and right things at a very small level. But to get it to sort of a fully working level is going to take a little bit more time, and the technology's got to improve a little bit as well. But to get something up and running is definitely something I want to have in my lifetime. And then it's about making sure that goes forward. And I've got loads of I've got different what they call different areas and different parks and different levels and all sorts of stuff come building off of it. But at a basic level, we'll stick with that.
I love the concept, and absolutely, it's this connection, whether it be a virtual or a physical connection. We can't operate alone. It's not possible to be alone in this world. And so the vision that you have of helping others and the collaboration and the being able to find the other people who have interests that you share, again, it's how, yes, change begins with the individual, but it's collaboration that makes those things happen on a larger scale that will affect the way that we live in the future.
Absolutely, yes, we are not alone.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We're back into that sci-fi world again. So
Or we can go ancient philosophy and go no man is an island. I mean, you can go John Donne. I mean, it's either way, but
all good, all
that's
good.
and that is also the key thing, is that I just referenced something very old, that there is actually nothing new. And I mentioned something on Buddhism and before and everything, and it's not because I particularly, but it's all there. All the knowledge is there. It's all been written about in the past. It's just we forget about it, or it gets confused by other things. It's just pulling through the things. But they talk about stuff now. I've read stuff in business books which I've read in the Bhagavad Gita and from Hindu texts from 6,000 years ago. And it's like it's all there. There's nothing new.
There isn't. But with the ability to now have at our fingertips everything, it becomes overwhelming as to what to sift through to find what's relevant. And so your role, my role, is to do some of that sifting to help other people to really understand what it is that matters in life. And for you, that, comes, there was a catalyst that spurred you into the shift. And we often see it with our clients that there's a moment when they realize that this is no longer possible. I can no longer function like this. There's a moment when, and that is the case of, I think both of us are trying to help people to not get to that moment, to try and not have like that extreme realization that you need to get to. But I have found that those who do have that more extreme version then go on to do an incredible amount of things.
Yeah, and it's that, when we talk about the search for purpose, very often purpose is revealed through trauma, quite significant trauma. And so we will see lots of inspirational speakers that had a really horrible time, and then they talk about it and they've made something from it and move forward. And this is to your point. It's like, well, okay, how do we get connected to purpose without having to become a drug addict or lose a leg or whatever it might be? And it stems out of the insolvency work. The first book I wrote was like a self-help book for people going through an insolvency, and I interviewed people going through it. And all those that got back up, because they got down to the lowest level, they found out what really mattered and what really counted to them and built up from that. And you say, how do we have to help people get there without having to go through that traumatic experience first? The truth is there will be some form of trauma with a small t that's underlining it, and the earlier we start on it, the better. But it's back to that whole point. It's not out there, it's inside. And you start with inside and then use outside as a reflection, as a mirror, to bring the resonance in place.
Yeah. And we've talked about trauma with a big and small T. We've talked about reason with a big R and a small R. We've talked about purpose.
A purpose small P and a big P, yeah.
Absolutely, right. Andrew, we could talk forever on this topic, and it's been wonderful hearing the inspirations that has brought you to where you are now, and knowing that there is still a way to go. This is your life's work, and absolutely, I salute you for all that you're doing in your business enjoyment phase, and wish you all the best with helping people to change the way that success is measured going forward. I'm sure people would like to connect. What's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is through LinkedIn. That's where I don't really have much of a presence on other social media platforms, but that's the best place to see the fresh stuff, any new stuff. I'm going to be running, I'm running a number of sort of free sort of drop-in things for people. There's always going to be stuff coming up. So go to LinkedIn, check the featured section. Name's obviously Andrew Miller, but that's a common name. So use the business enjoyment as the hook. If you really don't like LinkedIn, then just go to my website, which surprisingly enough is businessenjoyment.com. Who knew?
Well, both those links are in the show notes, so they won't have to do too much searching. They can just click on that link and it'll go straight there. So all good. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on and sharing why you're doing what you're doing, why you are who you are, and what it is that is really inspiring and motivating you in your lifetime. So it really has been a joy to share this conversation. How would you like to close out the episode today?
I'll go with a thought for life, which if you can get your head around this will help massively if you're dealing with things. And it sounds counterintuitive, but the trick is to get comfortable with chaos. We are desperately trying to control everything all the time, and that's back to that attachment thing. That's part of the problem. And if you understand the concept, if I may expand a little bit, if you may have heard the term chaos theory as a concept of system. What the need to hear about butterflies and hurricanes and all that sort of stuff. What it actually means, a chaotic system is something with a tiny difference in an input has a massive difference on an output, which essentially means, in a nutshell, you cannot predict what's going to happen. You do the same thing over and over again, a different result will happen. Now, there's a very famous phrase about insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is literally the definition of chaos, and we live in a chaotic society. So we actually live in an insane society, an insane world by that definition. So if we get comfortable with that and go, hey, of course things don't work out the way we expect them to do all the time. Of course it isn't perfect. But if we can sit with that space, ride with it, and just get connected and use our purpose as that beacon to take us forward, we can get comfortable in chaos and then not worry about too much what's going on.
What value have you gained from tuning into Focus on Why today? What are your reflections with actions? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or via LinkedIn and share how Focus on Why has made a difference to you. Your feedback not only will inspire others, but will help them to discover how Focus on Why has created powerful ripple effects. Let's continue the conversation. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or X, join the Focus on Why Facebook group, and sign up for my weekly newsletter, Friday Focus, to keep in touch. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.